Hi, I'm Clyde Kilough, and this is Verse by Verse. Pentecost. It's an odd word with a strange story. Its Greek origin simply means count 50, referring on how to calculate its timing. But there is nothing simplistic about its Old Testament origin and New Testament meaning. Together they reveal some of the deepest insights of God's work with humanity. Today, virtually all Christian denominations commemorate this holy day called Pentecost, claiming, for enhanced credibility, to trace their lineage back to that holy day in AD 31 that clearly marked the beginning of the church. We find it mentioned 3 times in the New Testament, the first being in Acts 2:1, which is today's verse. When the day of Pentecost had fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. Now, the chapter goes on to describe several fantastic miracles that occurred that day, and it led to many of those hearing Peter's sermon that day to be cut to the heart, it says, as they recognized the horrific consequences of their sins. Those who responded and repented and were baptized upon hearing Peter's words saw their lives dramatically change when they too received the Holy Spirit, as Christ had promised. That day's events literally altered the course of world history. We cannot fathom what today's world would be without the impact of the religion that emerged. Even hardened skeptics are forced to admit something powerful happened. How else could a body of zealous believers suddenly appear, quickly permeate the Roman Empire, and so upset the established religions that they would rail against Christians, as we see in Acts 17, as these who have turned the world upside down? However, the religion that emerged soon turned into the religions, plural, that emerged because, sad to say, it didn't take long after Pentecost for the impostor Christianity that Jesus himself warned about to start creeping into the church. Within just a few decades after the day of Pentecost, in Acts 2, the atmosphere of being in one accord in one place was shattered as false teachers began bringing in ideas and beliefs that brought conflict instead of accord and put true believers in many different places doctrinally. Eventually, the Christianity that had turned the world upside down was turned upside down by the world. That's part of traditional Christianity's strange post-Pentecost story. It's akin to a switched-at-birth story, with the older Christianity not much resembling its infant counterpart. What happened? In his landmark book, The Story of the Christian Church, Jesse Hurlbut wrote of a missing gap in church history. He wrote, "For 50 years after St. Paul's life, a curtain hangs over the church, through which we strive vainly to look. And when at last it rises, about 120 AD, with the writings of the earliest church fathers, we find a church in many respects very different from that in the days of St. Peter and St. Paul." End quote. Well, that very different church created formidable political and religious empires. And prophecy shows that it will again exert a huge influence and deceptive power in the end times. The Apostle Paul warned that before Christ returns, a man of sin will occupy a prestigious and powerful position in the world, identified as one who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. The world will believe his claim to be the leader of the true church established on the day of Pentecost in Acts 2. You know, Jesus said, "Enter by the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." Are you desirous of finding the narrow way? And are you willing to walk in it? A great place to start is by discovering the original true meaning of Pentecost and the authenticity of the church that Jesus built. We offer a booklet that will help. It's titled, "Where is the Church Jesus Built?" You can find a link to download it in the show notes.
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.